I don't know about anybody else, but I am super excited about this panel discussion right now. So I want to make sure everyone's in the room that needs to be here. Kate's here, Kathleen's here. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So without further ado, this is the panel discussion portion of our afternoon of our journey to the cloud day to day. I'm very excited to be in the presence of what I think is tech greatness here. So I am going to let each of you introduce yourself and I know that there's a lot of interest in your own journey to the cloud. So if you could give, just a little tidbit about how you got where you are and maybe that journey that, we know it's never a direct line. So whatever twists and turns were along the way. Kate, I'm going to pass it off to you. If you want to start us off.
Okay, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Custerman Rivera coming to you from Deloitte. It's so wonderful to be here. So thanks for inviting me. Quick background, I'm the Cloud Capability Development Leader at Deloitte right now. In terms of my kind of journey to get here, I guess I started way back when with an engineering degree. So I'm a Purdue engineer. I've done multiple different things in my career, including leading some big ERP technology implementations, working with various government entities around technology. But specifically around cloud, 3 years ago, this opportunity came to be for me. Essentially, I saw that the firm, Deloitte, was going to make a massive, huge multi-year investment in cloud, and I kind of had an opportunity to get on the train. So I said, yes, sign me up. I want to get more involved. So I have now myself gotten more up to speed on cloud, including multiple journey to the cloud sessions, just like Kelly is doing right now. I think I have myself attended at least 6 of those. We put over 900 people in Deloitte through these kinds of trainings. And since then, we really recognized we wanted to go deeper and really deeper around cloud fluency. And I created and architected a strategic program around upskilling called the Deloitte Cloud Institute. So we are now really on that path, which is, again, diving deep around cloud native development skills, cloud certifications, et cetera. And that's a bit of my journey. So very glad to be here.
Thank you so much. That's a heck of a journey to the cloud. Kathleen, you're next on my screen, just on order of who I'm looking at here. Do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Kathleen Vignos. I work at Twitter, and you can consider me as like a cloud customer. That would be my, that chart that you all saw earlier with brokers and advisors, right? So Twitter has on-prem data centers and also has cloud work that we're doing with cloud vendors. So we're in that space. Like Kate, I have an engineering background. I used to design buildings for earthquakes. I hopped off and out of that. I went to UCLA and Michigan and ended up kind of getting into high tech a couple years into my career and made a huge pivot. Worked for consulting companies on ERP software, so also a little bit similar to Kate. But then I had young children and had been in the .com boom and bust and ended up starting to build websites. So many, many years I spent building websites for all kinds of different companies. From there, went to Wired magazine and ran their website and web department, and then ended up at Twitter. So the cloud part of my journey is really about 3 years ago. I was asked to move from kind of more of an application focused set of teams to infrastructure teams. And I can tell more details about that later, but one of the teams that is in my group is the Cloud Acceleration team at Twitter. So we are a group of teams in my organization called Infrastructure Automation that automate on-prem infrastructure and also in the cloud. So when we think of our customers, they want compute resources, and someday they don't need to worry about where those resources are. How can we automate everything so that they just get what they need, or they get cloud native technologies when they need those, or they use our on-prem facilities because they are optimized and low latency, et cetera. So what are the different needs of our customers and how can we put those together? So that's a little bit of a story about what I'm doing and kind of a little bit of how I got here. It's great to be with you all and thanks for having me.
Excellent. Roshana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Rochna Golani from Google Cloud. Got my jacket on correctly. So I run cloud learning. So this is something that is very near and dear to my heart and super thankful for ROI's partnership. So for me, my career also started, I am from an education point of view, definitely studied CS. That was a long time ago, but I uncovered my love for learning like right out of college. So I did the whole CS thing. Maybe it was the cool thing to do, or maybe it was the exact opposite of what my dad did. So I wanted to do something different, and he was a doctor, and so I didn't need to be a doctor. But after that, I discovered my love for learning because it was my first job, and I was to teach networking. And so learning has always like flown from there. I would learn and then I would share it back. And it was when I would share it back that I would realize I learned so much more, because now I got to learn from others on what challenges they were facing. You met many, many different kinds of students in the class, and it's uncomfortable to call them students because they were all real practitioners. And so, yeah, so I taught networking for a while, and then all kinds of Microsoft products for a while. And then my career really took off when I joined VMware, I want to say about 15 years or so ago, and still running learning. So that's the one consistent theme in my career is disruptive technologies, but worrying about skills for people in that disruptive technology. Went to the other cloud provider and then joined Google 5.5 years ago to start the learning organization here. So how do I keep up on cloud? I just joined the company that is doing it and work with the engineers closely is sort of how I think about it. And the only other thing I'll say is that for me, learning is broader than just the technology. So something that I do keep in mind is that it's about the human potential that we are ultimately trying to uncover here and what they can do with cloud. So that's what I keep myself grounded on. Thank you.
Wow. That's a jumping off point. Thank you. So I'm going to direct the first, Kathleen, I'm going to have you answer it first because of where your teams are headed. Okay. So when you look from an organizational standpoint, what is driving cloud adoption?
There are a number of different things. So right now we have data centers in the United States. So for us to be able to get data and compute closer to our customers, that involves getting all the way around the globe. We have, peak Twitter users everywhere. And so it doesn't always make sense to build yourself a data center depending on different jurisdictions and all kinds of legal issues. So that's one place where we can leverage the cloud. Also, competition for talent is real. And where, if you had unlimited engineering resources, you might have the skills and the capabilities to build new technologies. And Twitter has done that in the past. We've built our own storage systems. But at a certain point, when everyone's trying to get the same few engineers, you have to start thinking about how to put your engineering resources toward the things that are core to the business. And then what can you buy instead of building? And so there's technology in the cloud that we can leverage instead of building it ourselves. So that's another compelling part of it. And then there's also special offerings in the cloud, like you mentioned earlier, BigQuery, Athena. Those are compelling things that our developers want to use, and we want to make those available to people for machine learning and or analyzing data in all kinds of different ways. So those are some of the things that help us get engaged with the cloud.
Excellent. Hey, do you want to follow up on that?
Sure, yeah. So at Deloitte, we're working with 80% or so of the Fortune 500, as well as, various government entities. And so what we're hearing from them is that there are three big reasons that are driving their cloud adoption. One is unlocking business possibilities, new markets, new products, new services. Second, really what we're hearing, and I think we're also seeing as consumers in the world, is enabling, what I'd call next level experiences for customers and employees. What we're now all used to, right? Open your Uber app, get your taxi, or get your Uber, I should say, and get to where you want to go, right? So next level, different customer experience, and much quicker around being able to iterate and get that experience out to the customer. And then third would be, think of all the legacy organizations out there that are trying to modernize their core, and they have got to get off the old way of doing things, right? So a very big part of what's driving adoption too is this idea of modernizing the core so that they can now get to the innovation around growth, that they want to get to. So at a very high level, I think it's those three things. And I want to bring up maybe a quote here, if I could, that I just read, I thought was interesting, in a Forbes article called "The Tech Talent War Has No End in Sight." So it's interesting, we're just talking about tech talent. This is June this year, so it's very new. The COVID-19 pandemic caused an unprecedented wave of tech adoption for businesses across all industries. As companies learn to work remotely and connect with customers virtually, they essentially crammed a decade's worth of tech adoption and digital transformation into a single whirlwind year. So that is the reality of where we are. The idea of driving and getting to the cloud is now more accelerated than ever. We are essentially at an inflection point in history as it relates to business transformation with technology, with cloud truly at the core of essentially this fourth industrial revolution. So that's what I would say are the big drivers to getting to the cloud.
So with this in mind, and Roshana, you see this all the time, what are some of the key concerns around cloud adoption?
Yeah, I will echo what Kathleen and Kate have said, that this is clearly what we are seeing from our customers, is that capabilities and skills are definitely the biggest concern for people. As Kathleen was saying that, and Kate elaborated on that by saying that one of the main reasons people are moving to the cloud is because they want to do differentiated work, right? So we want to be able to build applications that are closest to our customers, closest to our business. And so the things that seem like everyone just has to do, because that's sort of the starting point before we can go off and do the things that differentiate them, that's what they're depending on cloud for. So the core requirement of skills has suddenly gone up, and you can't just be doing one little thing. And it's a big stack to know. It is a lot of new technology, and it is one that is continuously changing. So the biggest challenge that our customers have been telling us is, gosh, I wish we just had more people who knew how to who knew how to do it, and extensively, who were able to complete that. And I certainly also want to echo the idea that in the last year and a half since the pandemic, I feel like the acceleration of that need has increased. So customers have decided to accelerate their journey. Everybody was going to do the digital transformation, but it's just in these last 18 months, they've realized the need to accelerate onto that. And that means that there is this added pressure of cloud adoption, which is a good thing for the cloud providers for sure. So I'm not saying that as a negative, but it just means that there is the need for skills is even higher now. So there is a lot. So skills is definitely one of the big concerns that we hear. The other thing that could be a barrier is just policies, right? Like, so knowing exactly where data can be stored, how it needs to be addressed. So just thinking about acting responsibly with each one of them, right? So every environment, I feel like, needs to know where their customers are and how to take care of them. And that's beyond cloud. Like, I think every industry, every business is just a lot more mindful and aware of that and should continue to do so. So I would say skills more broadly continues to be the biggest concern.
So you brought up something that I drew an analogy in my mind here, being a parent. So let's say we have a toddler and they're trying to learn how to walk. So if they're walking slow, typically they fall less. But when they start to pick up pace and they haven't really got their fine motor skills, so to speak, working, they tend to fall fast and fall hard. And that's how we get the bruises and bumps along the way. So when you talk about companies speeding up the pace of adoption, accelerating this push in advancements, are we then seeing a greater risk in those bumps and bruises and the falls and the missteps with security and data, and what are you seeing out there as far as some of your customers, Kate? And are there opportunities for further learning because of this speed and rate and push for accelerated development?
I'm happy to chime in and then let others take in. But yeah, I'm definitely seeing a need for more skills development come in. But I also want to point out that it's also how they choose to operate. So we've suddenly started to get requests about being more engaged with our partners, being more engaged with our customers as they get on this first journey, and for us to be more mindful of that, right? So creating the right operating model, creating the right kind of policies and structures have become more important. And skills development has certainly, like, we get more requests now for saying, can you do this fast? Like, can you accelerate the learning journeys? Like, can you do boot camps, right? So that's a trend that I guess always existed, but it's just starting to happen more now.
Yeah, just to, I guess, pile on around that. Certainly acceleration is the name of the game. But again, at the same time, we have this truly massive talent shortage, right? So I would say a couple things that at least we are trying to think about in terms of the philosophy of doing this. A couple things. One is failing fast. Failing fast is okay, right? Try something, iterate. So really, this is a mindset shift. This is an agile DevOps type mindset shift, which is very, very different from do this first, then do that, then waterfall, and 4 years later, you have your ERP system, right? Very different mindset. So part of it is a cultural mindset shift that we're working with our clients on around iterate quickly, fail fast, and then get the next iteration out, right? Solve that problem. I would say a second thing, one thing that I've been fascinated about, I'm learning myself about more, is pod-based delivery. And many of you may or may not have heard of Jeff Bezos's theory of the 2 pizza teams. I think this is really interesting. Essentially what he says is every team should be small enough that it can be fed by 2 pizzas. So essentially your team should be no larger than probably 10 people. And by doing it that way, you really chunk up the problem. Each team can handle each part, and then you get much quicker iteration and much quicker delivery. So I think those are a few ways that at least we're starting to think about it. And again, shifting our own culture to be more what I call the engineering mindset, true iterative, agile focused mindset.
So with that, Kathleen, I'm gonna lean into you for a second here. As we're talking about scaling out globally and having to build out that infrastructure, I'm assuming there's also a need to scale out your teams and to, grow some operational practices and so forth. So what are some of your highest priorities as far as capabilities when it comes to scaling out just not only the product, but your teams as well?
Getting away from, since we're talking about teams, so Kate's talking about 2 pizza teams, there can sometimes be a tendency to build a team around a technology. You're going to build, the BigQuery team. Whereas we want to be building teams around capabilities, analytics, or streaming analytics or blob storage or whatever. And then if you have if you're trying to make the transition from an on-prem environment or your own managed services to cloud services, then you're going to have many offerings in that space. So you might have your own blob storage, you might have S3 buckets, you might have Google's cloud storage. So what does it look like for a team to support across those different environments? What does it look like to need to build a consistent tool set? Because the problem now, you also have to monitor all those environments. You need to have logging from all of those environments, right? There's a proliferation of management maintenance. So that's something that, our cloud acceleration team is doing a number of different things to help teams onboard to new cloud technologies, to be able to manage these different services in their complement of services they provide to the company, to provide guardrails around data and security, so that that's sort of baked in when our teammates want to set up a new project, like it's coming with some of the policies that are needed to keep things safe, keep data safe and protected and used in the right ways. So that's a bunch of different things that, we're thinking about very directly on how we can scale to across, because our intention is to be a multi-cloud hybrid computing environment. A lot of companies are just migrating wholesale, and that can make sense for lots of people. But for us, we have a very specific technical use case. We need very low latency. We need to be global. And so we're kind of in an interesting situation. And plus one also to the experimentation, the need to create experimental new features. We're shipping features faster as a company. So how can we get things out there in front of users and then determine, like, do we want to keep this feature or, move on to the next thing? Yeah.
So that's interesting when you talk about your team. So just talking back about maybe you have a storage team that works with all the different blob storage across all the different entities, right? And so what I'm hearing from all of you is saying they don't only have to understand storage. They also then have to understand security and permissions and logging and monitoring and usage and all of the things, right? So that's some of that layered skill building where you're saying, hey, it's not just a single skill set, that the human capacity that we need is actually that multi-layered skill set going forth. So that's a lot of things to stay up on. So I'm going to pivot to the next question in line here is, what do you do to stay up on all the things? What do you do to stay up on all the tech and all the cloud? Roshana, I'm going to start with you because you probably are closest to the source of all the cloud things.
Yeah, so I always think about three things, right, that are important. But let me start off with one overarching theme, in that I think, first of all, adopting cloud is not just about adopting a new technology. It's more than that, right? As we've heard both Kathleen and Kate talk about this, that it's a cultural shift that you're trying to drive in your organization to be agile first or DevOps first. This idea of failing fast. At Google, we call them blameless postmortems. Like, when you fail, that's an awesome thing, but make it even more awesome by quickly doing a learning session from that. So what did we learn from this failure, so that we either don't repeat it or repeat it with a small change so that we have a higher chance of success, right? So 9 out of 10 ideas should fail. That means we're doing enough innovation, because the 10th one is going to be a big one. So what can we do to keep doing that is super important. So for me, in that way, one of the biggest things that we can drive in that is that culture of learning, is this idea that we can keep growing and keep scaling. So learning no longer needs to be an event. It's not a training class that I went to. It's what am I doing on an ongoing basis, where I am experimenting, where I am failing, where I'm seeing the commitment from leadership to be able to do that and say, yeah, go try this out. If it doesn't work, it's okay. We can move on to the next one. So when learning becomes just sustained in the organization is when you have the growth mindset. I genuinely believe that adopting cloud is about creating an infinite mindset. It's about thinking that really anything is possible. Like, think about the power of things like Spanner and whatever else. And if you don't even understand what can you do with it, how are we going to do something with it, right? So there is no limit to technology anymore, and there's no limit to compute. What can we create with it, right? This is like that, I don't know, 10,000 piece Lego set with like no instructions. What can you build? Really anything, right? And so that's what I think is required. So to me, the single biggest thing is not about going to a class, because of course you'll do that. Of course you'll do your hands-on labs and certifications and, you know, learn your new technology. But it's like the leadership commitment that you're driving to say, keep learning, keep failing, continue to have that growth mindset. So learning really has to become a cultural phenomena in the organization.
Kate, you want to give your top tips on staying up with everything?
Sure. And then Kathleen, for sure, just so you, yeah. So here are a couple very tactical things that I'm doing. One is I am following TechCrunch, trying to read TechCrunch, usually through Twitter, actually. So that's just telling me, you know, kind of like what are some of the latest things going on in technology overall. I subscribe to the CIO Journal, which is part of the Wall Street Journal. It's just kind of a, you know, view just from the CIO's perspective. For the Deloitte folks on this webcast, that's something that we can all leverage. And that's really useful. That's, again, more from a C-suite, you know, executive view. What are the top of mind issues for CIOs? I just subscribed recently to Wired. So trying to also, you know, get that perspective. And then I would say, from a Deloitte standpoint, where I work, I'm trying to take advantage of some of the content and eminence we have. So we have a Deloitte on Cloud blog, an on Cloud podcast. By the way, this is all out there externally. Everybody could, you know, can link to these things from the Deloitte.com site for free. So all of that is really helpful. They're pretty pithy, you know, kind of here's what's the latest on cloud complexity management or whatever it is. So again, the blog and podcast help. There's a great Deloitte Tech Trends report that's done every year that is a bit more futuristic, what's coming in the next 18 months. And I'd like to read that to just be thinking again, what's ahead of us? You know, what do we need to be thinking about now so that we're prepared? And then I'm trying to read also. So I'm going to just put in a little plug for my book that I'm reading right now. It's not my book actually, but anyway, this one's called Ask Your Developer. Let's see if I can get it in front of myself. Ask Your Developer. It's by Jeff Lawson. It's very interesting. What I like about it, his premise is basically software is the future. And it's all based on cloud. So software is the future. His couple key themes are build versus die. So instead of build versus buy, build versus die. So you better be building your own apps, your own APIs, et cetera. Another key theme is code is creative. So get the juices flowing with your developers and your coders. And experimentation is really a prerequisite to innovation. So anyway, it's a really interesting book about that. And so those are some of the things that I'm doing to, you know, try to stay up on what's going on with cloud. Actually, one last thing I will say, I would not undervalue getting a credential, an actual certification in cloud. Why? Because these credentials matter. They matter for your current employer and the next employer that you go to. Really any level, whether it's a foundational type certification, an associate level, a professional, or a specialty level in one of the big three, AWS, GCP, or Azure, I would spend the time and start, you know, finding something that might be interesting to you and get yourself a certification. Couple things, easy ways to do that: LinkedIn Learning and Udemy are huge, massive platforms. You may have already access through your own employer to these. If not, you can do it on your own for really quite a low rate. But there's plenty of online learning out there to get yourself, for instance, AWS Cloud Practitioner certified, or AZ900 certified, or the new Google Digital Cloud Leader certification. Those would be great ones to start with. So I would not undervalue that. I would really recommend that. And that's one of the things I've done. And I think that's a helpful thing for all of us. And Kathleen, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. I could talk about learning all day, so I'll try not to take too much time. So yes to Kate saying certification. I did the certification, and actually that's part of why I'm here today, because ROI Training through Google was the trainer that we brought in, and several people from Twitter, including me, took the courses and then got certified. So I've got the GCP Cloud Architect certification. And especially once you're in leadership, your ability to be hands-on really goes to a very small amount. And so those workshops, being hands-on, creating mental models for things, actually writing kubectl at the command line, it all really helps it come together in my mind. Learning, Roshana said it's her job. She's got, she's running this whole organization, and learning is her job. And I feel that way as well. I'm reading, a dozen technical documents every week about Kubernetes and about infrastructure as code and cloud storage platforms that we're implementing real time in my job. So I'm very lucky that I have access to just everything that's happening all the time. Other tips. Follow cloud computing and cloud platforms on Twitter. There are topics on Twitter that you can follow. You can start to get a feel for the players and the people that talk about these topics. I tried to crowdsource a little bit for all of you by tweeting last night. So my handle is Kathleen Codes. And I just tweeted, hey, folks, what would you recommend to people who are, what are good follows for people trying to come up to speed on cloud? And so some of my colleagues and friends posted some things there. You can check that out. But I also want to say something, backing up a little bit about learning. I really appreciated an article I just read by Julia Evans. And so her website, I just put in the chat. She wrote this article, and it so resonated because it's the way I've been learning my whole career without really being able to articulate it the way that she did, which is build first and then fill in the learning gaps later. And I've done that all my career. Build a website. How does HTTP work? I don't know, I'll figure it out later, and that's a totally valid way to learn. So she wrote a great article about it, breaking down the barriers of when you're reading documentation, when you're doing training and it's not making sense to you, that's fine. It's part of the learning journey. It's, some people will describe it as a spiral. You touch it once and you get 10% of it. You touch it again and now you get 20%. And the words make more and more sense. The concepts make more and more sense as you go along. So I do want to encourage everyone not to get discouraged when it's confusing and it doesn't make sense. It will, you just have to hang with it.
I'm
So
just
that-
gonna take 10 more seconds and just say
go ahead.
that I do think that there are many, many resources available, like Kate said, but set a goal and learn something all the time. That is the only way to keep up with it. And it doesn't have to be in a classroom. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all on demand as well. We can definitely learn it in the way Kathleen said, where build it and then go back and learn, and then it puts all the pieces together. Every work is fine, but as long as we set a goal for ourselves, say, I am going to do it. And so that's it. The only tip I would say is be deliberate about learning, and then it'll happen.
So Kathleen, what you really described there is sort of a natural learning model, right? So, you can try to learn a new language by listening and taking little lessons, but if you just go move to a different country and you just are immersed in it, then you end up learning it because it's going to be around you. You're going to get all those touch points, and eventually you're just going to start to build those, those skill sets there. So I hear you guys have given so many. So I'm sure that our listeners right now are just super, super appreciative of all the resources. I'm going to have you reflect on a decision you've made in the last 3 to 5 years. So you've been watching the Twitter feeds, you've been subscribing to the blogs, you've been going through the trainings, you've been joining new teams and pushing new initiatives. What has been the most critical decision that you've made for your career in the last 3 to 5 years? If there was that linchpin, what was it?
I'm happy to start if you want, or
All right,
okay,
there
cool.
we go.
I have two, so I'm breaking the rules already. So one, in terms of the most critical decision the last 3 to 5 years or so, one is actually really deliberately shifting to the cloud space. I had heard about cloud, everybody here has heard about it, right? But like intentionally saying, yeah, I'm going to do that. I basically had an opportunity to change roles, become this cloud capability development leader. And I realized, holy moly, I got to get myself, upskilled here. So I think that was an enormous decision, was being kind of willing and ready to say, yeah, I don't understand this and I'm going to lead it, but okay, I'll learn it as I go. And I will apply some of my knowledge to hopefully, help get this moving. But I definitely realized that what was happening was our firm, at least Deloitte, and I know it's not just us, but our firm was truly making basically the largest investment in the history of Deloitte consulting, and it was around cloud. I said, okay, this is a good place to be. So I would say, that was probably the number one best career decision. The second one was more of a kind of situational moment. And it was basically in March of 2020. It was the Monday after we got shelter in place orders in Chicago. And, everyone was absolutely afraid and nobody knew what was going to go on. And my team was feeling the same way. And I really thought about it over the weekend. What am I going to tell my team? Like, how are we going to move through this? And so I met with them Monday morning and I said, listen, we are going to strategically pivot everything to virtual and we are going to achieve our objectives. It is our duty and it's our mission. This is our leadership moment. So what ended up happening is, we basically just set that goal. Okay, we're going to do it. And we figured it out through working with multiple partners, including ROI. And we ended up, interestingly, scaling even faster and more broadly than we originally planned, which is kind of amazing, right? From the fear and panic of what are we going to do to saying, okay, this is our leadership moment. We're going to take this hill. And this is our opportunity to make a real difference in truly building the capabilities of our workforce. So it's been I think that was just a very important decision to kind of leave the fear behind and like, let's move forward and figure this out and set a goal and then do it. And that's been very exciting to see and we continue to basically be upskilling virtually and it's working somehow. So anyway, I would say that was my kind of second most important decision over the last several years.
I really appreciate how you had that, how you can reflect and you had that intentional moment where you had to make that decision about how am I going to communicate and lead in such an unusual, never before seen situation, right? And that you can reflect on that and say that was a game changer. It just being part of this audience where there's hundreds of women just listening to you, that's big. So thank you for sharing that. Kathleen, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Both Kate and Roshana have talked about being deliberate. And I think it can be a little overwhelming to think that what the end of the story might be 20 years from now. So you don't need to worry about that. But that idea of what is the deliberate next step you're going to take. I like how Kate noticed the opportunity. So she grabbed it. And, Roshana has had this learning thread through her whole career. So for me, 3 years ago, I was asked to step into this very low-level infrastructure role. And that was not my skill set. I didn't know that area as well. I'm an application developer. And so the question that I asked is, why me? Why now? Like, why me? What do I bring to the table if I have this steep learning curve? And the answer that I got back had to do with, I had demonstrated capabilities around cross-functional effectiveness, like being able to bring multiple different teams together to move forward on programs and collaborate and work quickly, learn quickly. So taking that particular risk at that particular time, the way I sort of thought about it was, do I think these folks will support me in my learning journey? Because I'm not going to know anything at the beginning. Will I be supported to do that? Will they have the space to learn? And why am I learning this? And I thought, it would be really a great thing for my career to really fill in the knowledge gaps, as I mentioned before. When you're working at the application level, you don't always really fully understand how the networking works or exactly how compute resources are managed. And so I thought it would be good for me to get that deeper knowledge and then potentially, come back out into the application space, really understanding that at such a deeper level. So I took the risk, and I did have the opportunity to learn and grow, and people were very kind and shared lots of information with me. And then I did my own work. I did the training. I put in the time. I read the docs, so that I could get better and more aware and develop the technical understanding as time went on. So that was a big risk. Felt like a big risk. There's a picture on my wall in my bathroom of me jumping off of a cliff with a bathing suit on. And I think about, it felt like that, like jumping off of a rock into deep water. But I'm glad I did it, because I've learned a lot. And that was definitely a pivotal moment, because it also opened me to the opportunities in the cloud, which is obviously so key to everything that we're doing in technology right now.
So Kathleen, you bring up an interesting, and it sounded like, again, you were intentional in your reflection, but one thing I think that sometimes we don't think about a lot with regard to employment is that relationship between employer and employee needs to be mutually beneficial. And you brought up that you looked at this opportunity, not just for how you asked, how am I benefiting you as a company? So what am I bringing to the table? But you also acknowledged the opportunity to benefit yourself through all of this filling in the gaps, the growth of the skill set, the personal reward of this leap and what it might mean to you. And I think it's worth noting that you thought about both sides of that coin in this situation. And it's important when you're looking at taking leaps and steps that it needs to be a mutually beneficial fit in that regard. Roshana, 3 to 5 years. I mean, you've only been at Google, what, 5.5 years? So
Years.
Is that one of them? Is that one of the big shifts that?
No, I think coming to Google was the decision 5.5 years ago, which was really an awesome one. But I got two. I'm gonna take Kate's leadership here and follow that. So I have two. One, a decision that I feel like I made for everyone else, which as a woman came very easily to me. And then there was a decision that I needed to make for myself, which was a lot harder. And I'm going to speak to the women in all of us right now, because we all struggle with this. When it comes to speaking up for ourselves, I feel like we make this a lot harder on ourselves. So last year with the pandemic, one of the things we realized was this opportunity that digital transformation was accelerating. And us being in learning, skills being a gap, we had this amazing idea that one of the biggest stress relievers for the world and people was to learn something. And when you were in a pandemic, that was a big problem. There was a great HBR article on this. And we said, well, what if we could just remove any friction that might have been there? And what if we just make all of our learning available to anybody and everybody for free? It was just there and available. So even that little cost that Kate mentioned wasn't there because the world was dealing with the pandemic. And it was an idea that I took up to my management chain, and I fought hard for it. It didn't take a lot because they were all convinced with the idea of benefiting everybody. And that was a great decision, right? We felt great. People wrote us a lot of so-called love letters for how impressive that was that Google did that. And I'm really proud of that decision that the team helped us make. A similar decision 3 years ago was for me myself to say there was this opportunity to lead learning overall, and I had to go ask for myself. It was the same management team that I was now asking, but this was a decision or something that I was asking for myself, which I felt like took a lot more courage. I knew I could do it. I had it in me, but it took a lot harder. And what I think it was really important for me was to know that my family or the people that I count on had more confidence in me than I had in myself. And so my husband, my girls, my mother-in-law, everybody was like, you've got to go ask, like, what's going to happen? They're going to say no, but you're already there. If you don't ask for it, it's the same thing as them saying no. So just go ask for it. And so I'm hugely thankful to my family who are just always there to say, you go do what you need to go do. And, we've got you. So I felt like that was a great decision I made. I'm here and I'm happy for that too. So 2 good decisions. I wish I had a sad one to tell too, but this was 2 good ones.
So as you talk about that you kind of got the feelers from your family and so forth, I always feel as though any accomplishment that I have, I am standing on the shoulders of greatness of some
Yes.
of the leaders that came before me. And I'm just wondering, during that time, are you thinking, I have got to model this for my daughters? I have to ask because they need to know that I asked. Like, was there that small accountability piece? Like, I need to model this, what I want for my own kids.
There was definitely that pressure. And again, for all women who are speaking here, who I have the privilege of speaking with, and for all that are listening, there's greatness in all of you, and you being there, you're role modeling for other people. After I took this role on, I had a whole bunch of people just message me and say, just thank you for being there. So really, there's no reason for us to put any more burden on ourselves than we already have. For each one of you who's listening today, there's no reason to add any more pressure. You doing what you do every day is enough. You're inspiring enough people around you, as is. My daughters certainly tell me that. I have 2 of them. And, but I get inspired by all the great women around me, and I'm thankful for that. So yes, there was that pressure. I feel like we always do feel it. And I keep reminding myself, if I can just be me, that's good enough. So good enough is an important word for me these days.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Hoshana, this idea that just physically taking up space in this industry is important. Being at tables where we're sitting, where there didn't used to be any women at all, and now there are, it means a lot. I didn't have these role models 20 years ago. I only just recently had a female manager for the first time. So that's such a great and powerful statement, because it can be discouraging. Your job's stressful. There's all kinds of reasons why you might think, why am I here? But it means a lot to all the women in the community. I too have a daughter. She's in college. She's studying info science and engineering. So I'm excited that she's chosen this pathway, only because they're just, you can't believe the number of opportunities. There's just so many opportunities, and I want that for her. I want that for everyone, to everyone have access to the opportunities that exist. And so there is that knowing that you're modeling for young women, taking charge, going after more responsibility, leaning in, all of those kinds of things. I do see a question about handling family and work, and I don't know, Kelly, if you want to take that separately or if you want to talk about that now, but that's something we could mention as well. I don't know.
Lean into it. You can, yeah.
So I've got one son in high school and one daughter in college. And when they were little, I was very fortunate to be working from home and building websites, and very flexible, because I was a developer. I wasn't interacting with tons of people on huge teams. I was just building websites all day long. So when I went back full time, my kids were in 2nd and 5th grade. And that was really hard, because my husband was also working, and there's like, who's going to take the kid to soccer? And we kind of had to figure all of that out when you're in the office all day and you don't have that flexibility. But I've really, one of the things about having family and work is you have to use the time that you have, and there's no such thing as like, oh, I'll just stay till 7 o'clock to get this thing done. When my kids were younger, I had to be out the door at 5 o'clock to run around the city and pick everybody up. And it really sure made me productive and focused, because I didn't have any wiggle room. I had to get things done and then get out the door. So it can be a great advantage to have the boundary. It forces you to be with your family and to do something outside of work and not be a workaholic. And so I've found it to be beneficial in those ways.
Kate, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I was going to add a few things since we're touching on this overall topic. So Roshana brought it up too, which is this idea of getting over your own imposter syndrome. Get over your own imposter syndrome, because we all have it. Like, oh, I don't know enough. I'm not exactly qualified on every single one of the 10 points of this job description. I have not, I'll tell you an example back in when I was implementing this enormous ERP system at the city of Chicago. I thought, well, I've never done this before. Well, guess what? Neither did the guy over here who was about to do it, who just quit. So my boss said, hey, I got your back. You can do this. You'll get it done, and I've got your back. And so that was enough for me to try it. That was a massive, for me, the biggest thing I'd ever done, $25 million implementation, massive, huge implementation of the city of Chicago. I thought, I can't do this. Anyway, so to me, there's a big theme about kind of get over it, like put it on the shelf and just say, all right, I'm going to try this. And then I want to talk about this tech talent gap around females for just 1 second, since we brought it up. So Christy Lamar is our women in technology leader at Deloitte. She just published something in Fortune, actually 2 weeks ago. Here's what she said. Here's something we should all be talking about. Women, who make up half of the US population, remain severely underrepresented in technology, and they continue to flee the industry at alarming rates. In fact, women make up just about 25%, so a quarter, of the technology workers, and the quit rate for women in high tech is 41%, which is twice that of men. So the point here is really this: for every woman who's on the phone right now, this is like a massive opportunity for you, right? It's an enormous opportunity. And if there's one word that I could say about that, it's upskill. Upskill yourself. This is a massive opportunity. It's hard to describe how large this opportunity is. For anybody who's interested in technology, women are very underrepresented. This is, it's your ticket. It's your opportunity to take advantage of.
I'm just going to add in just one more thing on how do we balance work and family and everything else that's going around you. I do think you have to create your support system. You have to know we're critical of ourselves. We want to do it all. And yes, we can do, but it's okay to ask for help. So I've realized that that's the only way to pull it all off. Ask for help when you're unable to do it, because that's what other people would do. So why is this very difficult bar that you're trying to create for yourself? That I want to excel in work. If you're good at that, go do that. But it doesn't mean that you have to cook for your kids every day. It's okay to get food from outside every once in a while. It doesn't mean that they have to be dressed perfectly all the time. If they have mismatched socks, it's the new fashion trend. Just go with it. So I just really feel like
Oh, I think we lost audio. Roshana, I think we lost your audio. Do you want to mute and unmute and see if we get it back?
am I better now?
You're back now, yeah.
Okay. So I was just saying that I certainly feel like I've created these rules for myself that the bar has to be high. I was not a good teacher last year when my kids had to homeschool, and I was dealing with that. I was a better teacher at work teaching networking to people than I was at home teaching my 6th grader how to do English, and that's okay. So I'm like, okay, well, that's going to require a tutor because that's not my skill set. So I think it's about really leaning in to ask for help. We don't ask for help enough. And I've realized that when I've built the right team at home, that we're good. When somebody can chop vegetables, I can cook. When I have to do it all, I can't.
I like that. Just there's a lot of good positive feedback in the chat here. So
Can I just add one quick thing on that, Kelly?
yeah.
So I completely agree, which is create your own team at home to help you do whatever you need to do. Same thing. My husband's working full time. I'm working full time. We got 2 young kids. We got to figure it out. So we have a sitter who comes, and she handles everything after school, helps the kids get to their stuff, get their homework done, do their reading, if they have a math lesson, whatever it is. And guess what? She also helps us do our grocery shopping and the laundry, because I finally realized that's it. I don't have time for that, and it's not high value for me. So figure out what your team is, and I learned that from some of my mentors, but figure out what your team, needs to be to help you so you can have the time that you need, to focus on the higher value things. And I would say one last thing is, don't be afraid if there's a point in your life to dial down when you need to. I did that. When my kids were first born, I dialed down. I said, I still want to do strategic work at Deloitte. I want to make a big difference, but I want to do it on a lower, reduced work week. And so I did that for several years. And then each year I'd kind of amp it up just a little bit, from 50% to 60 to 75, 80, 90. Literally, I got to 90%. I said, okay, that's it. Now I should just be full-time, because at this point now I should just be paid to be full-time, because I'm basically full-time. But the point is, don't be afraid to do that. You're still in the game. You're still contributing. And you know what? To Roshana's point, don't be afraid to ask also for what you want. I said, I want to do this. I want to have a dial down, but I do not want to have some little role over here doing, something very kind of meaningless. I want a strategic, important role. So, and I asked for it. Why not? All they could say was no. Anyway, so I guess be flexible in the way you think through things, and find your team to help get through and support you, especially when your kids are younger.
I like how you emphasized, you said something there that, if I can paraphrase it, to form a team around you so that you're giving yourself your value add time back, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
because honestly, it's not high value to spend 4 to 5 hours on a weekend doing laundry.
right.
So awesome.
Or-
Let's
or
find
pay
someone else and a win-win, right? Someone else who could help you, who really actually, that would be a great job for them and help with their income, right? And relieve that from you. So figure out the win-wins, right? And find your team to help, so you can focus on the higher value areas of your life.
Yep. So there's a couple people submitted questions, and we've got a couple questions here about starting out, entry points to career. So let's just picture someone who has spent some time, maybe gotten a certification, maybe has kind of a green resume, doesn't have a lot of connections in industry. What advice, what would you tell them? How do they break through as one of those, 25% women in the tech field? How do they get a seat at the table? And even figuring out that, these, the resume sifters have some AI built into them. So there's some bias there. And how do we break through and figure out a way to have some critical conversations for employment opportunities? Kathleen, do you want to start off here?
I'm gonna sneeze, sorry.
Oh, okay. Roshana, do you want to start off here?
Sounds good. I'm happy to lean in. I do think that, there could be a lot of bias in the system and it could work against you. There are two things that I think are really important. One is networking. No matter what school you went to, no matter what training class you took, no matter what you do, maintain those connections. This is a skill set that one is going to need throughout their entire life, entire career. It doesn't matter who you become or what role you have. To get to the next place, you know somebody. And you don't have to know just other women. That's the other thing I'll say, is that there aren't enough of them, to Kate's point earlier. So you've got to mentor, you've got to network with people who don't look like you, and you have to be comfortable doing that, right? Having the skin color that I have and being from a different country, I probably did have to take a lot more steps to form that networks of that maybe other people would have to. So I would say that would be really important for us to consider, is who's in your network, who can you reach out to, who can get you connected to the next person that you have. And so I'm super happy to say that I personally definitely recommend LinkedIn and things like that. but also don't look for, I think Kate mentioned this earlier, don't look for having a checkbox and everything. Just go for it. Show up with confidence. I got this is the attitude we need to have at all point of time. And that would be the big thing. Certifications do help on your resume. And sometimes you have all the knowledge, it's just this final credential that is helpful. And a lot of the resume sifters go through that and filter that out. So any kind of credentialing that you can do for yourself, do that, and network would be my two biggest tips.
Excellent.
Now that Kathleen's done sneezing, back to her.
Yeah, that was like just the moment, right? So I think some of the barriers, right? What are the barriers? You want to do something new, but you don't have actual experience, and you're reading resumes that say you need experience. How do you get that experience? Well, playing around with the tools, playing around with the console, getting a free account. My son had a weekend project. He wanted to play with the Google Cloud Vision API. So we sat there and played with it. So now I know a little bit more about the Cloud Vision API. Could I say like, oh, I have years of experience in it? Of course not. But you really are looking for chances to just play and experiment and learn so that you can at least say you have familiarity, you have mental models, and you kind of understand, how it works. So that's maybe a barrier to getting the very first thing. But, I think some creative thinking too, if you're already in a company, Kate referenced this, you're seeing an opportunity. Can you laterally move or shift so that you can take the knowledge you already have and then build? So that's basically what happened to me. I had Twitter knowledge, I had application knowledge. How could I build on what I already knew, come from some base and foundation of strength and experience? And then it was easier to say, I don't know this other stuff, because I did have a reputation of getting things done, and I could bring that to bear. So maybe there's opportunities inside, the places where you already are, where it's easier to do something brand new because you have some foundation to work with there. So those are maybe a couple of ideas about how you can kind of navigate. And I mean, plus one to everything Rashana said too, but.
Yeah. And if I'll give my 2 cents here too, if that's okay. So again, this is for advice for someone who's kind of just starting out or trying to pivot in their career, right? I would say 3 things. 1, strive for excellence in everything you do. Here's what I mean by that. Take it seriously, have an aptitude of how can I demonstrate ability and really outcomes. Take your performance seriously in your work, as well as the way you lead teams. Show up as a leader. So 1, strive for excellence in what you do, because what happens then is you get seen as a rock star. Now you're tagged, right? People know you, there's buzz about you. It may be within your company, it may even start showing up on LinkedIn or whatever. So if you do the work, you show the outcomes, right? Good things follow. 2, I would say be open. So be open to possibilities. I mentioned this idea of, I had this opportunity at the city of Chicago to suddenly lead this massive multi-year ERP implementation. That was not on my radar at all. And in the end, I was open to it. And I said, okay, I'm gonna, whatever, let's try it. Let's see how it goes. Well, that was that was really a career-changing moment for me, being able to say, yes, I'm going to try this. This is outside my comfort level and even my current skill set, but okay. I do feel like I have the backing of my boss and I can figure this out. So kind of be open to that. Along with that, in the be open category would be, find the mentors. And by the way, mentors can take, again, very different shapes and sizes, and male, female, inside work, outside work. There's no one right answer, but find mentors that have values that are important to you. And I would also say in that be open, if you can, pick a company that has a collaborative culture. Because in the end, you want to be in a place that is all about, let's roll up the sleeves together and let's get this done. And to me, that's a very important value that I have. And I would put that in that category of, be open to that. Third and final, but probably most important, is increase your own tech fluency. So here's what, and minimally, I would say your tech savviness. So this is the way I like to think about it. I think about it on a continuum. At the far left is cloud or tech aware. Let's use cloud for an example here. Cloud aware. I've heard of cloud. In the middle is cloud savvy. Basically, that's what you're getting today. That's what Journey to the Cloud is all about. This is like cloud fundamentals. What that means is I'm now conversationally competent in cloud. Savvy is important. On the far right would be cloud fluent. This means I am developing apps in the cloud, right? I'm hands-on, I'm helping migrate, whatever. This is true fluency. So what I would say is either go for fluency or savvy at a minimum, but get yourself upskilled. So sign up for those, the ideas that we talked about around TechCrunch, Wired, blogs, et cetera. Get yourself, kind of in the game there. I would say pick a certification that you think is realistic and try it. Again, you can do this on LinkedIn Learning or Udemy. Get yourself certified as an AWS certified cloud practitioner, for example, relatively easily. And if you really take it seriously, while you're getting certified, to Kathleen's point, you can actually spin up an EC2 instance and all that, because now you just got yourself on the AWS console. Now you know what that is. So do it, actually take the time to do it. Pick one that you think is realistic. And I guess last point on that one is remember that this massive tech talent shortage plus an even larger gap for women in tech equals huge opportunity, huge opportunity. So those are my 3 pieces of advice.
I thank you. That I jotting down so many notes today. This is awesome. I can't wait to pass these on to people. But Kathleen, you put in the chat an interesting tidbit here. And I think we forget as sometimes as individuals, but also as women, that just because we're doing something well doesn't mean that we should stay there. I like your idea of work yourself out of your job. I had a role a few years ago, and it was a kind of a leadership train the trainer role where I was moving around the organization and I was trying to build capacity in all these different locations. And I would get asked, what's the end game? And I said, the end game is that I'm no longer needed here. That's the end game. And it surprised people to hear that, right? Like, no, I'm successful if you don't need me anymore. That's the whole goal, right? Interesting place to be there. I like, it was good there. Okay. So fun question, because we're kind of running low on time. What is your personal tech passion? So like Thursday evening, you've got some free time. What are you looking at? What are you investing time in? What's your personal tech passion here? Kathleen, you want to start us off?
Well, I don't want anyone to know this. But I'm still helping people with their websites, like just 2 weeks ago, somebody was moving their website to a new provider. So I was helping them migrate it and helping, okay, you got to transition the domain. Here are the ways you need to do that. I did a review of the site, tested it on mobile and also on different browsers. So yeah, I need to not do too much of that, just because I also have to, do my job and be with my family and stuff like that. But I still help with things like that. I love the projects with the kids. I love it when one of my kids is doing something. Or actually I had a friend's son who was taking a class and he's like, can I ask you a coding question? I was like, you're going to need to put me on screen. And also I need to see your code, because, people think, they'll tell you like a tiny bit. And you're like, I need all kinds of context to help you with your problem. Those kinds of things are really fun. I really enjoy those.
Nice. Roshana?
I am gonna follow what Kathleen said, just not reviewing people's code, but I feel like I am spending a lot of time helping people with their career. So I feel like a lot more women are reaching out to me, and either they are just getting started or somewhere where they're trying to get back into work, and they're like, how do I do this? How do I prepare for my interview? How do I, increase the value of my resume? So I find myself spending a lot of time with not just women, but early in career or getting back in career people who just want to understand how to do that. And most times they're trying to get into something with cloud, but even when they're not doing that, general interviewing tips, leadership tips. So giving back in things that I don't have to work very hard with, because I do feel like that's my time after everything that we've contributed to already. This feels like a really rewarding, satisfying way because it comes naturally to me.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and for me, I would say my passion has kind of become this intersection of technology and talent. It really is. It's the thing that wakes me up in the morning and gets me excited. And it's kind of multidimensional. So certainly in my role, in my job, right, building capabilities, but also this idea of what else can we do around women? How can I support more women in this category? So a couple of things there. I also have a daughter, and doing things with her Girl Scouts and, figuring out, girls who code with that group, or I did a little kind of hands-on experiment type thing with their troop, stuff like that. But, it sounds cheesy. All of the research says this starts when girls are in like second or third grade, and not getting exposed is a very big part of it, right? Not seeing cool role models, not necessarily me, maybe, but not just not even knowing what's out there. What are the possibilities? So anyway, this intersection of technology and talent it really is my passion. And one last example is my side hustle, which I always say at work, is being the campus champion for Purdue tech recruiting. So I went to Purdue, right? But I'm just doing this as a firm contribution, not my job, but I do it because I love it. It is absolutely so motivating to see that we are in such good hands for the future, to see the type of really sharp minds that are coming out of universities right now, but also with this true new way of working in their minds, very agile, focused thinking, and really very deep technical abilities to be able to apply. And it's so motivating to see that. So I would say that that's another thing, is like my passion. I love being around that energy, and also figuring how to bring those people in and then support them so they thrive. Right. So it's not just getting them in the door, it's building the community around them, make sure they have buddies or whatever it is to help them. And then, so in that way, I guess it's similar to, I think Roshana, maybe Kathleen mentioned as well, I do a lot of informal mentoring, on the side, 15 minutes here or there with whoever basically raises their hand. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We could keep talking for hours and hours and hours about this, but I really just want to say how much we appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to be with us today. And I have jotted lots of notes, and I'll be trying to put some of this together and keep tweeting it out. Kathleen, little nod to the Twitter there. And so with that, I just want to just say thank you. And if you have any final thoughts for the group, you can say them now. Otherwise, I just really want to just say how much we appreciate your time today.
I do want to say one thing. And if you take anything away from this, I hope you heard all of us say, talked about the talent gap, talked about the value of women, talked about the opportunities. And so that should mean to you that you can take risks, and you can get out of bad situations. If you're in a team and you're not valued, get out of there. There's so many opportunities. Take risks. You're going to be great.
One to that, and I was just going to say, you're all amazing. Whatever you're dreaming of, whatever you're not dreaming of, you got it. Just go make it happen.
Yep. And my final 2 cents: upskill yourself. You can do it. This is the time. The opportunity is massive. Just do it. Upskill yourself.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.